Hello everyone. This is the first part of the story. Blade God of Blood. Chapter 1 Vampire. I don't want to die in the Marvel world, and why do I have to be a vampire? Why am I so unlucky? In the dimly lit room with the windows closed, Burt Wong looked at the poster on the wall with Tony Stark's handsome face, and his head hurt a little. Although he likes Marvel movies, he doesn't want to travel to this dangerous world, which is the same as surviving Doomsday, let alone as a vampire who is at the bottom. Vampires are afraid of the sun, garlic, and silver. Even being an ordinary person is 100 times better than being a vampire. At least, ordinary people can go to the beach to enjoy the sun, beauty, and bikinis. I have to find a way to change all of this. I don't want to be a mouse all my life. Bert's eyes became sharp. He looked at the poster on the wall and thought deeply. Tony Stark looks the same as in the movie. It should be a movie-based Marvel world. Well, the only vampires in Marvel movies are in Blade, but now it's 2008, and the era of Blade seems to be quite early. After the rise in popularity of Marvel movies, Burt rewatched the Blade trilogy, so he was a little knowledgeable about the matters of vampires. At this moment, a voice suddenly came in from the door. Burt, why do you keep staring at Tony Stark's poster? Do you like men? Burt turned his head and saw a pale red-haired woman in a t-shirt and shorts looking at him sneeringly at the door. Next to the red-haired woman was a 1.9-meter strong man. Seeing Burt looking over, the strong man glared at him fiercely. Burt pretended to be cowardly and looked away. This man and woman are also vampires. The woman is called Jenny, and she is the one who bit Burt before the time of travel. To put it simply in one sentence, Burt coveted Jenny's body and Jenny craved for Burt's blood and money. As for the man, his name is John, he is a thug. Burt had been beaten many times by him before, and he did not dare to resist in front of him. Burt asked in dissatisfaction, "Why are you here again? What, do you have an opinion on our comings?" John said irritably. "Don't forget, we turned you into a noble vampire." "That's right, do you know how many humans have no chance of becoming vampires?" Jenny said. As she said before, the development of new vampires won't happen just with a bite, they need to drip their blood. Who the fuck wants to become a vampire? Burt complained secretly, he sighed. The vampires are completely different from what I imagined. I thought that the vampires would be like the vampires in the movies, elegant and noble. After speaking, Burt glanced at John and Jenny with a look of disappointment, and the two suddenly became angry. Does this look mean that they are not noble or elegant? It's true, but you can't say it out loud. Can we be noble and elegant without money? We are not those purebloods. Note: purebloods are born vampires' offspring that were conceived between two turned-blood or born vampires. Jenny walked in and snorted coldly. Those pure-blooded vampires are better than the vampires in the movies. They not only have infinite wealth, but also inexhaustible blood, and even raise many handsome men and beauties as their slaves. We can only buy expensive blood bags to drink. If it wasn't for those cowardly purebloods who signed a contract with humans, and were not allowed to suck human blood, how could we do this? John complained unhappily. Every day's hard work is just enough to buy blood bags. It's not as good as being a human being. By the way, I heard that the money for buying blood bags was different for pure blood and mixed blood. Pure blood, mixed blood? Burt's eyes flashed, and he asked again. Since there is a contract, why did you turn me into a vampire? John came in, grabbed Burt by the collar, and lifted him off the ground. He said grimly, "Boy, what did you say? Say it again. I didn't hear it just now." "I didn't say anything." Burt turned his head away and shouted, pretending to be a coward. In fact, he couldn't stand John's breath. "It stinks." John snorted, threw Burt on the ground, and said impatiently, "Stop talking nonsense. Give me $20,000. $20,000? Where are you spending it too fast?" Burt got up and said reluctantly, the parents of this body left him a lot of assets before the car accident. He was always worried that he would be targeted by the bad guys, but the bad guys didn't come instead, the vampires came. Jenny giggled and said. It's okay. When you run out of money, we'll take you to find the next rich man, and then use your blood to develop new vampires. Is it still sustainable? Bert secretly complained. He sighed, picked up the checkbook from the side, and began to sign. The old American side generally used credit cards or checks for large sums, and $20,000 was not a small number. John nodded with satisfaction. He said, Don't be so stingy. When Boss Deacon leads us to overthrow purebloods, all humans will become our food, and then we will truly become nobles. Yes, vampire nobles, drink more blood, spend more money, all human beings are our slaves. Jenny also shouted frantically, in the hearts of mixed-race vampires, Deacon Frost is their savior. Deacon Frost? Bert's heart moved. If he remembered correctly, Deacon Frost was the villain in the Blade movie. In the movie, he successfully led the mixed blood to overthrow the pure blood and used the Daywalker blade and 12 pure blood elders' blood to turn himself into a blood god. The blood god is very strong, and he is not afraid of sunlight, garlic, or silver. He can even be recovered after being cut in two, but it seems to reduce his IQ. That is to say, the plot of Blade has not started yet? This is good news. Blood God has powerful strength, and endless wealth and opportunities. A flash of light flashed in Bert's eyes, and then he handed the check to John and asked about Deacon Frost. Boss Deacon will hold blood banquets every once in a while. I'll show you at that time. It's difficult for us mixed-race vampires to survive alone, and we have to be in a group. John took the check, patted Bert's shoulder, and said with a wide-eyed smile. Bert snorted coldly, Grouped together? Isn't this just exploitation? Pure blood exploits mixed blood, and you exploit me. After getting the money, John and Jenny left happily. They will spend all the money in a short time, and then come to Bert until all his money is spent. This is the way they thought of making a fortune. I still need you to help me integrate into the vampire group, so I'll spare your life for the time being. Bert stood by the window watching the two leave and sneered inwardly. They were just two vampires. If he wanted to, he could easily kill them. Just take a photo of them with ultraviolet light. It's so sad that vampires are too weak. Bert couldn't help but complain. He thought for a while, picked up his clothes, and went to the street to find the owner of the gun shop. If he wanted to finish his previous thoughts, he still had to strengthen himself first. The owner of the gun shop had a scary face. After listening to Bert's request, he said in amazement, "You want to find an instructor to train your combat ability? What trouble have you encountered? If so, I will suggest you call the police or spend money to eliminate the disaster." Bert shook his head. "No, I just wanted to do something exciting all of a sudden." The shopkeeper of the gun shop glanced at Bert and said, "Then you can go to a formal training company. Although I have a shooting range here, I don't have an instructor. It's just for people to test guns." "That's too slow. I don't have that much time. You are well connected. You should know some private instructors, the kind who have been on the battlefield." Bert said, "I can pay you some introduction fees or buy some more things." Hearing that there is money to be made, the shopkeeper of the gun shop smiled and said, "In this country, you can do anything with money, but the price of private instructors is not low. A good instructor is naturally worth a good price." Bert smiled. He heard early in the morning that the boss was a retired veteran, and he had a way to find them. As for money, if he can't solve the trouble of vampires, it's useless. Besides, it doesn't belong to him anyway. He can use it as he like. "You are good." The owner of the gun shop didn't talk nonsense, closed the door of the shop, took out a notebook from the drawer, and put it on the table. "The above is the training officer I can contact, but you need to discuss the specific conditions yourself. I will help you by introducing them." "Let me consider." Bert picked up the notebook and turned it over. The information on it was very detailed. In addition to the name, there was also a resume, but there were no photos. Bert turned a few pages and saw a name. He was stunned for a moment. The owner of the gun shop glanced at him and introduced. This is a real ruthless character. He has won the Navy Cross and the Medal of Honor, and now he is training for the troops officer. Of course, he charges the highest. It is indeed a ruthless character. Bert nodded and secretly complained. Can you not be cruel? This is the Punisher, Frank Castle. By the way, the Punisher, who has big eyebrows and big eyes, secretly accepts private work. Punisher, an anti-hero who uses violence to control violence. The one he targets will die. To exaggerate, even the cockroaches in the gang will not survive. Of course, Frank's family isn't dead yet. He's still a retired trainer, and he's not blackened. It's him. I want to talk to him. Bert closed the notebook and said. The shopkeeper of Scar smiled and said, I hope you have enough proof to buy the gun you need. Although it is easy to buy a gun here, you need a gun license. Among them, it is much easier to buy a rifle than to buy a pistol, and these certificates, I am sorry, he does not have one. Bert smiled and said, I can buy some souvenirs, the expensive ones. The next night, Bert met Frank Castle, a tall and strong man with a sturdy and iron-blooded aura in the cafe. He doesn't know if it was because he became a vampire, but he smelled the mountain of corpses from Frank. With the smell of the sea of blood, there is no doubt that this is a ruthless person, a wolf. Frank frowned at the sight of pale Bert. To be honest, he didn't like him very much. He was too thin, and his breath was too cold, which made people uncomfortable. However, thinking of his comrades who were short of money and needed help, Frank sat down and talked about this private life seriously. After the friendly greeting, Bert smiled and said, Mr. Castle, I approve of your strength, but I have a few requirements. Seeing that he started talking about business, Frank breathed a sigh of relief. He hated politeness the most, and he said, Tell me about it. First, training can only be done at night. I don't have time during the day. No problem, I'm not free during the day. Second, I want to have the ability to fight in the shortest possible time, both for fighting and firearms. We can use the shooting range if you want. Of course, I will pay for it. Frank glanced at Bert and said coldly, It's not impossible, but in that case, the training will be cruel, and you may even go to the hospital. I have strong resilience, no problem. Bert smiled and said, Mr. Castle, you can train me as you like, as long as you think it can improve my strength. Frank couldn't help but glance at Bert again. Does this kid have any special hobbies? As for the third request, it's not a little too much. Bert said a little embarrassedly, and Frank frowned. Before he could think about it, Bert continued, I hope you can protect me during the training process. Frank was puzzled. What do you mean? Bert said, I just want to go to the street to find some violent elements to fight. You protect me. This one? Frank doesn't have a problem with this request. When he was in the Middle East, he often asked recruits to do this. He pretended to hesitate and said, You need to pay more. Bert laughed. No problem, Instructor Castle. I'll trouble you in the future. Don't worry, I also have a request. Frank waved his hand and said, You have to pay first, and whether you quit this training or not, I will not refund the money. Okay. Bert nodded and agreed. If it was someone else, maybe they would torture him on purpose and let him quit, but the arrogant Punisher would not after only 24 hours. He realized his naivety. Damn, this guy is torturing me on purpose, and then wants to run away with my money. Bert covered his cheeks, feeling that his teeth were about to be knocked out. Don't you want to have the ability to fight in the shortest possible time? Then go straight to actual combat training, and if you want to fight, the most important thing is to learn to be beaten first, learn to endure pain, and learn to keep calm in battle. Frank, who was wearing gloves, shouted and punched him with a ferocious momentum like a tiger hunting, which was daunting. Bert backed away in fright while parrying with his arm, but after only a few punches, his arm was so painful that he couldn't lift it, and then, of course, he was punched in the face again, and he fell to the ground in a whirl. With a loud bang. I don't want to cheat you. If you give up, I will give you a month of regular training, but if you want to make it fast, you must endure such pain or torture. Frank said. Actually, it's not as good as my training for recruits. At least I haven't started swearing. Who do you look down on? Go on. Bert grinned and said with an ugly smile, he doesn't want to be a vampire who hides and can't see the sun all his life. Since he has come to this Marvel world, whether he can live or not, he must live wonderfully. In this way, it is worthwhile to come here by yourself. Life is as gorgeous as summer flowers, and death is as quiet and beautiful as autumn leaves. A glimmer of admiration flashed in Frank's eyes, and he shouted, Then get up, don't lie there like a bitch! Bert endured the pain, struggled to get up, and then said solemnly, Instructor, you are suspected of sexism. You still have time to talk nonsense. It seems that the training intensity is not enough. Frank snorted coldly and stepped up his training. Then Bert almost went to the hospital. Frank wanted Bert to enter the hospital, but Bert refused. He just dealt with it briefly and went home to drink the blood, and the pain is gone. That's right, drinking the blood he healed. Vampires are not completely without benefits, and their resilience is far stronger than ordinary people's. The only problem is that blood is too unpleasant to drink, and Bert is considering whether it can be made into various dishes to achieve the same effect, such as blood sausage, blood porridge, blood prosperous, and so on. Is he overtrained? His physique is much worse than those of the recruits. Frank hesitated a bit. It was easy for him to go beyond when he trains. There had been cases of recruits being sent to the hospital before, well, quite a few. Tomorrow, no, I will reduce the training a little the day after tomorrow. As for tomorrow, he probably won't come. Frank thought to himself, it was just beyond his expectations that the next night, Bert came running in the same spirit as yesterday, and asked impatiently, What are you training for me today? Frank was speechless. He confirmed two things. First, this guy's resilience is really good, and he doesn't look like a human being. Second, this guy does have special hobbies. Frank yelled, Rookie, what are you doing standing there? Hurry up and run, I want you to run 20 laps today. Yes, instructor. Bert replied loudly. Just like that, for the next month or so, he received Frank's training at night, and during the day he learned about this strange world on the internet. There are still many differences between this world and the movie. For example, this world has the Oscorp Group, which is not small in scale. The Oscorp Group is a concentration camp for villains, but it doesn't matter. I'm not a gentleman anyway. Fortunately, there are no mutants in this world, otherwise, it would be troublesome. Bert thought to himself, if mutant movies were also added, the world would be really lively. That night, Jenny came to visit again. She looked at Bert at the door and was very surprised. Why are you completely different, like a different person? More than a month ago, Bert was thin and weak, and his whole person looked very cold, but now, he is much stronger, and even the coldness on his whole body has been diluted a lot. Bert said casually, Why are you here again? The $20,000 have been spent so quickly. Jenny said dissatisfiedly, Am I the kind of woman who comes to you just to get money? Bert nodded very seriously. Yes. You know me. Jenny laughed and she said, Don't worry, I won't ask you for your money for nothing this time, and I will take you to the blood banquet hosted by Boss Deacon. Not only will there be a lot of blood, but there will be living people for us to enjoy. Hey, maybe you will be attracted by beautiful women. Blood banquets are always messy. Blood feast? Bert's eyes flashed, and he asked, Didn't you say that we have an agreement with humans that we can't hunt living people? Boss Deacon doesn't care about any agreement. Of course, he doesn't do it too much. Usually, he sends beautiful women to seduce some men who are dizzy when they see women, like you. Jenny giggled and said, Of course, they won't have such good luck becoming vampires. They'll only be food. Bert, do you know I'm good to you? I'll feel better if you don't want the money. Bert snorted and asked, When do we leave? Jenny said, Right now, John is waiting for you below, and we'll go when you are ready. I am ready! Bert went back to the house and took everything he needed, such as a Glock 17, purchased illegally in Hell's Kitchen, a special silver-plated flying knife, a small homemade smoke bomb, etc. This month of cruel training has made him grow a lot. Although he is still not a master, he is no longer a weakling without power in his hands. Soon, Bert got into John's car and set off. While driving, John showed off to Bert. This time, you should be able to see Quinn, the right hand of Boss Deacon. If it weren't for me, a vampire like you would have no chance to see him. Quinn? Bert said. John, what is the strength of Quinn and Boss Deacon? Are they the same as us, similar to ordinary people? Of course not, they are all elite vampires. Elite? Yes, elite level. They are very fast. Unless they are stabbed in the heart and head by silver, they will not die easily. John said enviously. Once a pure-blood vampire becomes an adult, she will have elite level strength, and for our mixed blood, only outstanding people like Deacon and Quinn are elites. Bert asked. How can I become an elite vampire? You want to be elite? John looked disdainful, and Jenny laughed as if hearing a big joke. Bert said, Think whatever you want. There are only two ways to become an elite class. One is to devour a lot of blood from living people, John said. The other is to devour the blood of high-ranking vampires, such as pure-blood vampires. Of course, no one dares to do this. Offending pure blood is a death penalty. Soon, they came to the door of an ice store in Brooklyn. John pointed to the symbol composed of 3 bars and some patterns on the wall of the ice store and said, That is the mark of Boss Deacon. Our vampire clan, generally only pure-blood vampires have a mark, but Boss Deacon is an exception. Jenny said admiringly. Boss Deacon is of course an exception, and there are even pure-bloods working for him. Bert thought to himself. In the heart of mixed blood, Deacon Frost's reputation is high, but why does he have so much blood to hold a blood banquet? Then, the 3 got out of the car and walked towards the ice store, because Bert was a stranger and was only allowed to enter the store together after showing his teeth. The bar where the blood banquet was held was hidden behind the store, and most people would not find it. Looking at the pig corpses in the ice store, Bert frowned slightly. The beginning of Blade's Edge seems to be in this store, right? Could it be so coincidental? Chapter 2 Blade Strikes. I should be careful if I die in the hands of Blade so inexplicably. Who is gonna cry for me? Bert thought to himself, and soon, he followed John and the others into the bar. It was very dark, with only a few light sources. Hundreds of vampires danced indulgently to the loud music, and at the same time they staged various unbearable scenes. It's disgusting. Bert didn't like the fun and was worried about Blade Fighter, so he found a quiet and safe corner. As for John and Jenny, they had already gone dancing, and Jenny even hooked up with 2 men. After a while, 3 men were brought into the bar by 3 beautiful beauties. The 3 men were completely unaware of the danger. They danced wildly with the 3 beauties and didn't even notice that the vampires around were drooling when they looked at them. Since vampires and humans reached an agreement, most vampires live on blood bags, and the blood of living people is often only enjoyed by pure-blooded gentlemen. Deacon Frost knows how to buy people's hearts, hold blood feasts, and get living people, but why haven't humans discovered it yet, and it's not so secretive? Bert was a little puzzled. Soon, accompanied by the sound of passionate music, all the showers above were turned on, and the spray inside was not water, but blood. What? The vampires roared excitedly, and while drinking blood, they wiped their bodies with blood. The 3 men who were covered in blood finally realized what was wrong at this time. Are these people crazy? Before the 3 men can do anything, the vampires surrounded them and even opened their mouths to show their fangs. Seeing that, the 3 screaming men were about to die tragically. At this moment, a sudden voice came from the entrance. There was a sudden burst of a gunshot. Everyone turned their heads and saw that several vampires were rapidly turning gray. At the entrance stood a cool black guy wearing a black trench coat, a metal vest, black sunglasses, and a shotgun. The originally noisy bar suddenly quieted down, and after a while, someone shouted in surprise, "God, it's Blade! Blade, the Daywalker!" The vampires were like frightened rabbits, screaming and fleeing in all directions. Yes, hundreds of vampires faced the cool black guy, and all these hundreds of vampires escaped. Blade grinned, his mouth full of white teeth, and then he unceremoniously pulled the trigger of the shotgun, only to hear a bang, and several vampires turned to ashes. Once an ordinary vampire is hit by silver bullets, the blood on the body will dissolve quickly, and then from the skin to flesh, from flesh to bone, the whole body is quickly annihilated to ashes. In a sense, it is quite environmentally friendly. "Blade is here!" Bert couldn't help but swallow his saliva and immediately fled from the side passage to the second floor. This shows his foresight. Compared with other vampires, he is not in danger. Blade's mother was bitten by Deacon Frost when she was pregnant, causing him to become half human and half vampire after birth. Later, he became a vampire hunter under the guidance of his teacher Whistler. The most vicious curse between vampires is "I wish you meet Blade." Blade Warrior has all the advantages of a vampire, but does not have the weakness of a vampire, and can even act in the sun, so he is also called the Daywalker. Naturally, there are security guards in this bar. When they heard the movement, they rushed out against the flow of people. One of the security guards shot Blade with a micro dash and shouted, "I'm not afraid of you." "Is this not afraid?" Bert, who was hiding on the second floor to watch the battle, couldn't help but complain. Blade sideways dodged the security guard's bullet and then fired a shot at the security guard. With a bang, the security guard flew out backward and disappeared into ashes in the air. At this time, more and more security guards rushed out with guns. After Blade fired 2 shots and killed many security guards, he threw the shotgun without bullets at the security guards, and then slammed his feet into the security guards at an alarming speed. Immediately afterward, Blade pulled out the long silver sword behind him and waved it quickly, only to see the sword light flickering, and the security guards were cut into ashes by the silver sword one by one. This is not only because the speed of Blade is too fast, but also because the security guards will die if they are cut anywhere. The weakness of vampires is too obvious. "Is this an elite vampire? It's amazing!" Bert was stunned. This is completely different from the movie. Although Blade can hit in the movie, it is only at the level of a normal person, after Image. "It seems that I can't measure the strength of superheroes with movies in the future, otherwise I don't know how I'll die," Bert thought to himself, and at the same time, his eyes were a little hotter. He wanted to have such speed too. Who has never thought of possessing extraordinary strength? At this time, all the vampires had fled except those who were killed, and Blade was about to continue chasing and killing. A blond man with a beard and 3 fully armed security guards arrived late, and when he saw Blade, he yelled, "Blade, it's you again! Quinn, this time, you can't escape!" Blade said coldly. Quinn didn't talk nonsense. He directly raised his gun to shoot at Blade, and shouted at the same time, "Kill him!" The 3 fully armed security guards immediately raised their assault rifles and fired at Blade. They were more professional than the previous security guards. At least, if Blade didn't move, their bullets could hit Blade. Of course, Blade couldn't stay still. He turned around and hid behind the pillar, then turned out from the other side, and slammed it hard. A silver double-headed spiral flying knife spun out at extreme speed, leaving a wound on each of the 3 security guards' arms, and flew back to his hand. But to Blade's surprise, the 3 security guards did not turn into ashes but turned their guns to shoot at Blade. If he hadn't hidden quickly, he would have been shot. "Ha, familiars!" Blade scolded. Note: familiars are human beings that have devoted themselves to the vampire nation and pledged themselves to a house or specific vampire leader. Quinn laughed loudly and shouted, "Blade, how arrogant you are this time!" Blade smiled disdainfully, took a flash bomb from his waist, and threw it out. The light flashed. The 3 guards were better, their eyes hurt, but Quinn screamed. Although there was no ultraviolet light in the flash bomb, the vampire, they are all afraid of the light. It was not only Quinn who was injured, Bert's eyes were also severely hit, tears streaming down his face. At the same time as the flashbang was lit, Blade quickly rushed out from behind the pillar. Blade flashed, and a security guard's arm fell off, blood flowing. The other two security guards heard the sound and immediately turned their guns, but it was still too late. Blade swiped with a backhand from the necks of the two security guards. The two security guards covered their necks with their hands, but they could not stop the blood from escaping without money. "Quinn, it's your turn!" Blade flicked the blood on the knife and said coolly to Quinn. Quinn threw the gun at Blade, then turned and fled back. Blade immediately chased after Quinn. Both of them were extremely fast, just like driving at acceleration. Bert on the second floor endured the pain in his eyes and followed. In a hall, Quinn was caught up by Blade, and the two fought. Although Quinn was also an elite vampire, he was not the opponent of Blade, and he was hit a few times soon. However, he was an elite vampire and would not immediately turn into ashes, but the wound is relatively large. Seizing a chance, Blade drenched a tube of red potion on Quinn. He didn't know what material this potion was. As soon as he poured it on, flames burst out of Quinn's body, and in the blink of an eye he changed. He became a burning man, screaming and rolling on the ground in pain. Blade held the silver knife indifferently, intending to cut off his head after Quinn fell into a coma. Even an elite vampire would still die if his head was cut off by a silver weapon. "Do not move!" Just at this moment, a few policemen suddenly rushed in and pointed their guns at Blade. Blade scolded, turned around, and ran away reluctantly. He was ruthless in killing vampires, but he would never kill innocent people indiscriminately. Several policemen chased them out immediately, and at this time, Quinn had been burned into a coma, and Bert couldn't help but be overjoyed. The reason why he followed was to wait for this time. Just when Bert wanted to act, Jenny's terrified voice suddenly came from behind. "Bert, what are you doing here?" Bert was startled and turned his head in a hurry. When he saw Jenny and John walking over with a look of panic, he was speechless. So many vampires died just now, but these two didn't die. "Is there any reason? Perhaps to give me a chance to take revenge?" Bert's eyes flashed, and he whispered to the two of them. "Our chance has come. Quinn was burned to a charred corpse." "Quinn was burned to a charred corpse, what does it have to do with us?" John was puzzled and said, "Let's go quickly, God knows if Blade will come back." Jenny also said, "Yeah, hurry up. By the way, Bert, you have to compensate us. If we hadn't brought you here, we wouldn't have to be afraid of this." "You still want money at a time like this?" Bert was speechless because the two people had low IQs, so he explained in detail. "Quinn is like this now, the police will send him to the hospital, and with the ruthless character of Blade, he will hunt him down to the hospital. Quinn is afraid that he will be doomed. We secretly help Quinn hide, and when Quinn recovers, we can follow him to see Boss Deacon, and then we can do whatever we want." John and Jenny's breathing immediately became rapid. It was their dream to join Deacon Frost's team. They didn't think about anything else, and nodded again and again. "Yes, we have to save Boss Quinn." Bert rolled his eyes secretly. It seemed that other words could be omitted. He said directly, "Then let's get started. This job is difficult or not, and it is not easy. The reason why it is not difficult is that the police don't know the existence of vampires, and they think that Quinn has been burned to death, so they don't care too much about such a corpse. It is difficult because this work has to be done inside, not outside, which will attract the attention of Blade, and Blade must be monitoring us now. This is also the reason why Bert wants to exchange the corpse instead of stealing it. After stealing the body, Blade will find out that something is wrong. At that time, Bert may have a date with Blade." Under Bert's command, John rushed in front of the police to find a man who had been tricked into being a blood bag before. After Blade came in, he hid in the toilet in fright, and kept shaking there, not daring to come out at all. John found him quickly. Because Bert specially explained to John to not kill him, and just knock him unconscious. As for why he didn't let him kill, John didn't ask any more questions. He was completely on top now, and he just wanted to contribute to joining Deacon Frost's command. Then, Bert sent Jenny to run over in front of the two policemen who were carrying Quinn while pretending to be terrified. Jenny was covered in blood, so the two policemen naturally wanted to chase after her to check what happened. As for Quinn's body, of course, they threw it away. The corpse won't run away, but it will be replaced. Bert asked John to exchange Quinn's charred corpse with the unlucky man. The two exchanged the corpse as quickly as possible, put it in a bag, and then sneaked to the underground garage with the corpse. It didn't take long for Jenny to get rid of the two policemen and come back, which would not cause any trouble, because many vampires had escaped before in this building. After finishing everything, the three of them drove away quietly. Because there are many exits in this place, they were not found by the police. The three of them were very excited because the good days are coming soon. "Bert, you are really smart!" Jenny excitedly went to hug Prince Bert but was avoided by Bert. He was not interested in this kind of stuff, and they were no longer worth using. The debt should be repaid. He, Bert, don't care about money, but his money is not so easy to get. In an abandoned building in Hell's Kitchen, John put down Quinn's body and turned to Bert. "Bert, go outside to catch the wind and see if anyone will approach." Bert was a little speechless, and he had no brains elsewhere. How could he be so good at bullying people? This is obviously because they don't want to share the credit with him, and then sit on an equal footing. "All right." Bert pretended to be dissatisfied but helpless and agreed. Then, while he put his hand into the pocket at his waist and held the flying knife, he whispered forward. "By the way, I have something to say." John didn't notice anything wrong and asked casually, "What's the matter?" "The thing is, it's time for you to hit the road." Bert suddenly took out the silver knife and stabbed it forward, and it stabbed into John's waist very smoothly. John looked at Bert in disbelief. Before he could say anything, his body quickly turned into ashes starting from the waist. "What?" Jenny screamed in shock. Bert threw the silver knife with his backhand, and the knife spun into Jenny's chest. "Easy. In other words, vampires are so weak, why should humans agree with them?" Bert nodded with satisfaction, the only excitement in his heart, no other negative emotions at all, just a vampire, not a human at all. After dealing with the two of them and retrieving the silver knife, Bert focused his attention on Quinn, who was on the ground, looking a little embarrassed. This marks the end of part 1 of the story, Blade God of Blood. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.